Hi everybody. Sorry we are with the last panel without cocktails yet, but no, certainly right after. I'm Frederick Stanichev. I'm head of sales at Habu. We are a data collaboration kind of company, and so we're here to talk about trends for 2023 to end up the day. So I'm going to let everybody kind of introduce himself, herself for the panel.
I'm Margot Grinberg. I'm the Vice President of E-commerce and Digital Marketing at Movado Group. It is a watch and jewelry company, in case you didn't know. Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Gruszka. I'm SVP of Digital Marketing and E-commerce at Aerin. We're a luxury lifestyle brand led by Aerin Lauder.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm Shambavi Sivaramakrishnan. I work with Anheuser-Busch. It's the largest beer manufacturer in the world. I am part of the global team as the Global Director of Marketing and Insights.
Hi, Tim Goldsmid. I'm the General Manager and Head of Marketing for Pacific Foods. We're the growth engine for what you just heard in the last panel for the Campbell Soup Company. So a line of soups and broths and plant-based beverages.
Great connection. Thank you, everyone. So, I mean, just to start a little bit of a conversation here, as we think about the start of 2023, we are just kind of coming into the first maybe kind of normal year after kind of 3 years of significant disruption for the pandemic. I'm just kind of curious to know, based on kind of each of your experience, the consumer behavior change that actually kind of happened over the last 3 years, and how we take that into kind of the new world that we actually are starting now, kind of seeing going back alive. Margot, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call this coming year normal. I think we're in a really interesting time where we can't really tell the future in terms of how challenging the world's going to be with inflation, and how challenged the consumer is going to be because of that, especially for a company like ours where we sell a very discretionary product. But I do think that we're actually going back into more like it used to be, where you have to really build your brand and build something desirable for consumers to get them to purchase. The share of wallet is different. You didn't for the last few years, and really this was the first year we were competing with restaurants and travel and all the other places where the consumer wants to spend. And so I think we have to get better at marketing and building brands to have long-term sustainable growth.
Awesome. Shambavi, I'm just curious from your perspective, because you have, being in the beer industry, a significant change in pattern and consumption. So,
Yeah, sure. So I think when we think about in general, like alcohol or spirits or any of the beer products, we normally think about we like to have it in restaurants or bars at events. Especially when we think about during the pandemic time, what we witnessed a lot is that we saw a lot of in-home consumption, as well as a lot of purchases moving more towards digital channels specifically, right? I think the purchase behavior, especially consumer behavior, is evolving, especially moving from offline, online channels, specifically from bars, restaurants into in-home consumption, how that behavior is going to sustain is something that we will be closely watching. But what this necessarily brings us is that how we are not just necessarily focusing on targeting consumer at one level, because when you think about where beer is, we are available on liquor store, convenience store, offline channels, specialty beer. Every particular, every multi-channel, the product is available. So we always think about a holistic way and a multifaceted approach of how we can reach consumers in a personalized way and target them in a way that, our communications and marketing initiatives cater to what they're looking for. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that we want to be as close to as the consumer as possible, and be there for every decision, along the way, every decision that they make.
Awesome, thank you. Angela, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last few years it's sort of been a break for e-commerce because we grew so much without as much effort. And I think things have normalized in the sense where it is a challenge and we need to put the customer first. We have to focus more on the customer journey, more on cross-channel orchestration. We aren't the first channel in the eyes of the customer anymore. There's many channels now. So I think, from a digital perspective, It's how do we remain front and center, trying to connect with the customer where they are at the right time. So at Aerin, we're really focusing on really refining that customer journey and looking at data more closely and trying to make our first-party data work harder.
Oh, thank you. So to your point here around like first-party data, so we've seen kind of a lot of the consumer behavior kind of shifting online, and now kind of the ability for companies and CPG companies to kind of really kind of go and build their own first-party data assets. Tim, I'm curious from your perspective around first-party data assets, kind of building and how it actually influenced strategy and like over the last 3 years and the evolution of it.
Yeah, so we don't have our own e-commerce today at Campbell's nor Pacific Foods, but it's something, especially on running a natural organic brand that's got to be plugged in consumers, we've actually looked at so that we can get at insights, and so that then we can be better across the connected channels and what's going on and what you talked about, how things are evolving. And so it's something where we've had a few brands at our company go. We had a new brand that went, and so we're sort of taking the learnings and continue to evaluate. But right now, we're really focused on how do we get better at Amazon, how do we get better at Walmart.com, how do we get better at Thrive and all the online retailers, and then where we can, trying to partner with those retailers to leverage, and we'll talk about retailer networks later, I think, the data that they have to really help us in that purchase cycle and connecting with consumers.
Anybody else on like the first-party data building on Jenna?
I mean, I think one of the focuses for us this year is really on enriching our data, our first-party data. We appeal to a very affluent, high-net-worth customer, and trying to understand a little bit more about our first-party data, the intent of our customers. So we've been in conversation with various data science companies so that we can pair the data together to understand more about the intent of our customers externally, so that we can optimize the way that we communicate to our customers as well as how we market to them.
Awesome, thank you. So going back to the retail media networks and kind of what you mentioned around understanding Walmart, Amazon, I'm just curious, based on the first-party data asset that you have, you might want to actually kind of go and enrich that data with those retailers because we got such rich transaction. Like, what has been kind of the level of collaboration with those retail media networks at this point?
You want me to take that? Yeah, I think from our side, it's been, I wouldn't say, I don't know if it's highly collaborative, but it's been highly encouraged in a lot of cases, especially to our sales team. And where we've looked at it, it makes a lot of sense within your marketing model, kind of lower funnel to drive transactions. And so what we try to do is balance that part of the mix. We know we need to drive sales, and so where it makes sense across those retailers, we're leveraging it. We're also then trying to make sure that our sales team and folks understand it may not be the best to drive awareness and to drive some of the other brand goals, and so we're still looking at other parts of the media mix and trying to put it together. So it's just an added capability, right, to generate a full media mix that we can use.
Margot, what's your perspective on it?
I think this word has been said a lot, in at least the part of today that I've been here at. But for us, when we look at it, it's a lot about how can we measure the incrementality of it. We've obviously been having strong businesses with our retail partners for a long time and want to make sure that if we're investing incrementally into this, that it's leading to incremental business. Yeah. So I think it's one of the biggest challenges, but it will definitely become some part of our marketing and our media mix. I think we're always looking at kind of where we can invest to get the best return, but it has to be something that is incremental. And then again, to your point, it doesn't really lead to brand building. And so making sure that it's just a part of the mix, because we still need to get the consumers to those retailers or to our category and then into our brands. And that can't really always happen within the platforms, but happens off-site or out of store.
How do you actually kind of measure that incrementality with those retail media networks?
I mean, I don't have a good answer for you. I don't think anyone has cracked the code on in any way of fully measuring incrementality of marketing in general and what it leads to incremental sales. And some of the challenges, and I was talking about this earlier in a roundtable, that I think, is the hardest thing, is we've gotten to a place where all of us are looking for a measurement on every dollar we spend. And that's really, really hard, especially when you are responsible for both a brand and retail sales. And so I think, no one really knows the answer to measuring full incrementality, but we're constantly looking at how our media mix, the return on those dollars across our brands, and trying to understand what is really about reaching consumers to help them, understand our brands long term, and what part is to drive conversion today, tomorrow, and in the next week or two.
Got it. Angela, what's your experience with retail media networks?
So we haven't actually approached it yet, but it's definitely something that's on our radar. We actually struggle getting data from our retail partners, so it's something that I think where we're looking to potential partners to help us, acquire that data to help benefit us, our company as a whole moving forward.
Great. Shambavi?
Sure. So when we think about like ABinBev, like I said, like our product is available in multiple different channels, right? So we look at it from a perspective of course, like when we talk about like one-to-one consumer data, it's not possible because probably like 25% of our sales is from e-commerce platform. So we look at it more from an aggregate level so that we can have a holistic view of how different marketing and non-marketing initiatives are impacting on our media dollars, marketing dollars rather. So we have a team that has built an in-house like model and capability that has artificial intelligence and machine learning models incorporated along with econometric methods. So we can like sort of accurately predict like how, if I'm investing in media, what's my ROI or incrementality on media? Or like if I'm doing sponsorship, how can I evaluate that? So rather than putting like a dot on the board and saying, this is what I'm going to do, now we have like some method so that we can do a data-driven way of like measuring things. And we keep evolving. I'm not saying it's a perfect model, but I can confidently say that we are getting better than where we were in 2022, starting 2023, and that guides a lot of our decisions into resource allocation and like how we need to put our media dollars against our portfolio of brands.
Great. Just kind of want to shift gear a little bit for 2023, kind of a trend that is a little bit emerging is, we've seen over the last kind of 5 years, there's been a turn towards privacy. And consumers kind of now leaning towards more of an economy of trust in a way, where kind of privacy is something really kind of precious for every one of us. And so we see now the states kind of about to legislate. I think we have about 29 states about to legislate in the US alone. And so I was just wondering, how does that impact kind of your digital advertising strategy for targeting and for measurements, really? Margot, if you want to start.
Yeah, I think it obviously creates a lot of challenges for brands today, and it keeps a lot of the data within the platform that you're marketing. And so, as we use the data we get on our own e-commerce to help us understand who our customer is, and then I think it just requires a lot more testing and learning. So whether that's putting out a bunch of types of creative and seeing who responds to it, but it's really obviously important that you continue to follow kind of these rule changes and make sure that you're protecting your consumers. And so we kind of continue to evolve as the landscape evolves. And when it gets challenging for us, it's getting challenging for everybody else. And so we're all on the same playing field. And so again, I think I feel like sometimes I'm a broken record here and with my team at work, but it really is, if we can build strong brand values, then the consumer will come to buy our products when they're in the market to purchase.
I agree. I think it's similar for us. I think just all of the privacy changes have encouraged us to focus more on our first-party data and get more strategic with our first-party data. And also zero-party data as well is something that is on our roadmap for this year. And to get more insights into our customers, and then also utilize that data to formulate lookalike audiences and so forth. I think we've been lucky up until this point, and now I think that the legislation is coming into play. It's more challenging, and it encourages us to think differently. But I think it's good for for brands to formulate stronger relationships with their customer and look at the data, look at the behavioral data, and just to build stronger strategies that relate more closely to the intent of our customers.
Tim, what about you?
Yeah, we haven't been as impacted directly by it, know that it's coming. Just looking for good guidance from our media agency in terms of how we're continuing to evolve. I think for us, it probably does mean as this happens, we're going to get more into, and we're already kind of going there, but influencer, PR, just kind of grassroots and attacking it that way in terms of creating scale where, maybe 10 years ago wouldn't be as much in the mix is what we're looking at from a marketing standpoint as we scale.
So as we look into 2023, what are the trends and things that you are actually the most bullish on for this year?
I can start. So I don't know if this is necessarily related to data, but I think we're all being forced to do more with less. And I think that AI will become a bigger part of our lives. I'm very interested in ChatGPT. I don't know if anyone has experimented with it. The other day, I typed in, create an email subject line for a frame email in the tone of voice of Aerin.com, and I got a better subject line than what my copywriter could write. And then I started to think about it in terms of ad copy and thinking about it in terms of SEO, and I just think the opportunity is sort of endless. And I think it's really interesting how Microsoft is investing into it in their partnership with OpenAI and potentially integrating it into the Bing search engine. So we may see a switch from Google to Bing, which is already an interesting growth channel for us. So yeah, I think AI is becoming real.
Margot?
I definitely second that. I think for us too, specifically, it's not just about marketing, but also how do we make the consumer experience better online. And the AI technology around being able to see a watch on your wrist virtually has been something that's been worked on for years and is starting to get to a place where I would actually feel comfortable putting it on our website. I think it was a little hacky, or you used to have to print out a piece of paper and no one has a printer, so that's certainly not going to work. So I think there's a lot of e-commerce applications of it as well, especially when you're selling a high-end product that people are used to being able to touch and feel in store. So I think that's one of it. And then I think another trend specifically in marketing is actually kind of going back to some of the basics or the old school marketing, right? I think television is continuing to be a big growth driver, outdoor, direct mail, and some of the non-digital channels are becoming more important again, especially in the last year, and I foresee that trend continuing.
And when you consider TV, do you consider TV linear, or is it connected TV kind of?
Well, I think it's a combination of both, but I think linear TV is still really important. I think connected TV is obviously a huge opportunity as well. You have more targeting, obviously, capabilities, but I think there's something about linear TV where you can just reach a really broad audience really, really quickly. And so there's just an opportunity around that as well.
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at 23, what I'm starting to see now is there's so much change. So we've got different channels, we have different consumers, and then we just started our planning process. We have more agency partners, we have more folks at the table than ever before, and so it becomes overwhelming pretty quickly. But I'm also feeling, as I talk to different folks, that they're all feeling the same, a lot of partners out there. So I'm optimistic for 23. We'll also start to kind of pull all this together and get it more streamlined and simplified so that we can continue to evolve how we talk to the consumers in an effective way.
I was going to say ChatGPT. I've been playing around with it every other day, sitting and typing some random questions, and I saw conversation, how interactive the platform is. Super impressive. But I think I would agree with everything that all three of them said, but one of the other things that I would also like that came to my mind is that, especially with how e-commerce and digital channels are taking shape, innovation, the ability to innovate and test and learn has improved a lot. For example, we launched a brand in Brazil. What we weren't sure about is like what flavor profile would necessarily stick in that market. So we launched it as a digitally incubated brand, and we were able to test rather quickly to see what's working and what's not working for that particular target audience group. So I think things like that, where with the help of like digital ecosystem that companies and organizations can, utilize and benefit from, especially in a market, in an ecosystem like this, so that you can learn fast and implement quickly, is something that I'm looking forward to.
So do you actually use data science and teams to actually kind of go and figure out kind of what the feedback from the market is in that case? And what
Yes. We have a very, very strong team of data scientists who are, in this case, it's a quick test and run go-to-market where we pre-seed and seed and learn. But yes, for all other like factors of like measuring incrementality for our innovation, or like, measuring impact of like our marketing and non-marketing dollars on our like, on our investment and sales.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have like a very, very strong and robust like, methodology and like, machine learning principles that guides our decision.
Awesome, thank you. So as we close out like, kind of the conversation, I'm just kind of curious about two things that you might leave this entire company with in terms of advice for 2023, and what your recommendation might be as everybody's kind of thinking about planning for this year.
I think a lot of it has been said, but I think one of the things you just said, which is what we're always doing, is just keep testing and learning and be agile. Focus on continuing to evolve your media mix and make sure you're supporting your brand as well as, the bottom of the funnel and conversion. And just always put your consumer first. At the end of the day, that's what we're always thinking about. Where does he or she want to shop? And how do I build something that makes them want to purchase from us?
I second a lot of that. I think going back to putting the customer first and innovating with keeping the customer in mind and creating value for the customer, I think is really important. I think last year a lot of effort was focused on experimentation, with the metaverse and so forth, but like ultimately it's about like what value does it, provide for the end user. And I think with, obviously budgets tightening and the changing landscape, I think it's more important than ever.
I agree with it. I'm just running out of like what other things, but I would also say that in addition being customer focused, innovating, testing and learning, I think also like have the technology ready for like, for what is to come, so that you have the capabilities ready so that you can test and learn faster, you can implement things quickly. So I would focus on like also getting the technology up to speed in parallel, while focusing on all other aspects of marketing, data and consumer personalized communication and consumer focus.
Outside, just curious, outside of ChatGPT, like are there other kind of tech trends that you actually see emerging for this year?
My head has been so focused on ChatGPT at this point that I would say metaverse, but it's not taken. I would say it's not as more relevant, or like from a standpoint of like reaching consumer, we are not there yet, I feel. I don't know if would you agree, but that's pretty much like, what I feel like we're not there yet for like investing a lot of like, media dollars in that yet to reach consumers. It will possibly in the coming years, yeah.
Maybe it's more about like the conversion of the virtual and physical worlds. So it's sort of that in between, I think.
What you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and I think for us, there's a real convergence of the metaverse and fashion. So when you're making a product, it's like figuring out how do you add that potentially value. It's not necessarily the reason they're purchasing, but if you could buy a watch physically, but then it also be in your metaverse closet, right? Creating or have that NFT of it, like having that kind of value creation right now, I think is kind of the step into it. But people still want to buy physical goods, I think, at least from us.
Our generation still. Yeah, that's the thing. Tim, what about you for kind of two pieces of advice?
I think they hit on the key themes, but I would just reiterate flexibility. So as you plan, making sure as you get results, you're able to move and pivot. And then I'd also just make sure you're always pushing to try to get the data, to try to get the read, to get the information. In this day and age, it's there for almost anything you're doing. So making sure you're pushing to understand that and then using the learnings. A lot of times we find in our companies, we'll plans set. Well, it's like, okay, we have the information, so let's go back and change it. And so making sure you're really pushing to leverage the latest results as you go.
Thank you. So I want to kind of open it up for questions, if any, because we have some time. So,
I'll ask a question.
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Heather with Movado. I handle the public relations and some of the marketing for the company. So one of the questions I have for everybody is I hear put consumer first, but how do you ensure that you're not jeopardizing your brand by doing that through all the changes in the environment? Just curious from a brand perspective.
I'm not going to answer your question. She hears from me every day.
Don't take a risk.
I mean, I think for us, like we try to brand safety and guardrails in terms of where we advertise. We try to be very selective in terms of influencers and everyone we use. But we're also, you're turning it over, right, in this day and age too. And so I think you try to do the best you can, but realize that there's more risk than, I don't know if it's at risk, but there's more opportunity for things to be challenged, things to be questioned than kind of ever before.
I think we appeal to a very niche customer set, so brand safety is not as much of a concern for us, but I think the data speaks for itself. So we're continually looking at the data, and when we do put the customer first, that's when we really see the results. But at the same time, there's a balance because we want to continue to inspire our customers. And a big focus for this year is really honing into their lifestyle and not necessarily focusing so heavily on the product. So I think it's a balance between inspiration and then looking at the customer data and then developing strategies around the customer specifically.
Any other question? Go.
I'll run it back to you.
Thank you. Joshua Pearson, Ometria. I am not a fan of buzzwords, right? And so we hear AI, we hear now ChatGPT. How much control would you be willing to actually hand over today when it comes to things like AI, right? So we talk about chatbots, that's easy. When would you look to hand over strategy and things like that? Where are we today, do you think, versus where we'll be I guess the question is, how long do you think it will take until we'll be happy to start handing over strategy versus just, hey, it's supposed to be worn this way or that way or whatever.
I don't think it's handing it off. So it's working in partnership. I almost like to look at it in terms of how we build a building. It's not like we build a building by hand. It's a partnership between man and machine. And I think it's the same thing for AI. So I think when we're talking about generative AI specifically, it's looking at the result that it provides and then tweaking it accordingly. So it's not like we're handing it over to them completely and letting it do its work, but we're continually tweaking. And I think it'll take some time before, I don't think AI will ever replace humans. They will always it will be something that helps us do our jobs better.
I mean, I would second that. I think you kind of said it before, but it's the brand guardrails and guidelines, right? So, I mean, this is a really simplistic example, but you could tell me I should put orange in Movado ads all day long. At the end of the day, that's not one of our brand colors, and doesn't work for our brand. So I'm still not going to do it, even if you tell me my consumer is somehow going to respond to it. But I think if you can put, a few different creatives in whatever that is, and through AI, and it says, that are all within your brand guidelines, and it says, oh, this one's going to really perform with this customer group, and this one will perform with that, then that's how it helps you. But it's an enhancement. It's not a replacement.
Any final questions for this crew? All right, well, thank you. Huge round of applause for them. You've been awesome. Thank you.